Greetings, this is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. This is Bonnie Bucqueroux, soon to be joined by Bill Castanier for Lansing Online News Radio. You won't be able to see our webcast tonight because we're going to do video instead. We're going to do video and then put it up on YouTube, and so that's going to be a more reliable way to get you the same information. So those of you who may have been wandering into our webcast, not this evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you. Good to see you. We're going to maybe start tonight with a conversation with Todd Heywood about Renegade Theater as you check and see whether our other guests are.
I will do that.
We are now on spring break, and so they can't get in until summer break.
I will return.
They cannot get in until we let them in, so we're going to go make sure the rest of our guests can wend their way down here. Todd, you were doing some things with Renegade Theater in Old Town. Tell us what those are.
The Renegade Theater Festival has been around, I think now, going on a decade.
Really?
And it's a series of small pieces of theater done throughout Old Town in multiple locations. I know they've got something in the park. I know many of the businesses have opened up spaces to allow performances to happen. So it's really sort of this organic theater that happens throughout Old Town. It's really fun. And it's often smaller pieces of theater that you would never be able to do for a main stage show at Riverwalk, or because it's too controversial, or because it's too short of a show to be able to have an intermission, that sort of stuff. So it really exposes our audiences here in Lansing to a whole variety of stuff. And I'm actually going to be being the narrator for the world premiere of a new Tom Klunzinger musical. And I'm afraid I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. I apologize, Tom.
Do you know what it's about?
I do. It is about a young gay man struggling to come out.
Oh, cool.
And it's actually quite interesting. It's a very interesting storyline. And then I'll also be doing this year, Tom Helma of City Pulse fame. Is putting together groups of folks to come and do readings of famous political speeches.
Oh, really?
And,
that could be interesting.
Yeah, and so I'll be reading Harvey Milk's "You Gotta Give 'Em Hope" speech.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
So.
Got a question for you. Well, do you know what the other performances will be? Have you heard the full roster of events?
I have not heard the full roster. One piece that I know that Peppermint Creek is putting together, I don't think I can actually say the name of the play on the air.
I see. It's one of those.
It's a reference to a male piece of the anatomy.
I see.
So, and that one is also dealing with two gay men. So there's a lot more taboo sort of stuff happening with this show. But there's also some family stuff that happens. Mid-Michigan Family Theater is doing the show actually in the 7 o'clock time slot in front of us for the musical. The musical will actually be at 9 o'clock each night.
So is it a number of theater companies that come together and participate in this? How is it organized?
It's theater companies and individuals, and just it's sort of a free-for-all of it. Think of the Fringe Festival in Ireland, and that's what we're talking about.
So when will this be?
It opens Thursday.
This coming Thursday.
Yeah, and it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. It's free for everything.
Well, I'm going to have to start getting out to more things. I went to the Great Lakes Folk Festival over the weekend because my husband performed 6 times. And there was an opportunity then for me to be able to see him. He did a workshop on musical outcasts, which was on the accordion and the banjo.
Yeah. I saw the videos and pictures you posted.
Yes, and his klezmer band played 4 times. And then he also played with Seth and May and Bob Bernard, Seth's father, Bob Bernard. Seth and May are familiar faces around here because of the Earthwork Music Collective. And May has done wonderful work as a solo artist, and so has Seth over the years. They are now married and have a little daughter named Iris. And Bob Bernard does Waltz Hour, and it was just lovely. I mean, it was beautiful weather over the weekend. They got great crowds everywhere. Lots of interesting kinds of music. They had the mandala making in one area. It's a really kind of wonderful community event. I was wondering whether the community would be able to sustain that after the national funding. That's always the challenge. And
that was interesting. I was working at the Town Courier at the time that they originally
came
for the very first one.
Oh, wow.
So it's been nice to sort of see it pick up and continue and grow in East Lansing. It's really a community gem.
It is, and they've done some really nice things with it. I mean, I was particularly delighted to see everybody dancing to klezmer music. We don't have a really strong Jewish tradition in the area, Jewish culture in the area, so it was, I didn't know if we were going to get a lot of people dancing or not, but we were able to do so that was wonderful. Good to see you back, Bill.
I'm back with one flag, but not...
I didn't realize realize it was such a fortress.
It is. When it's on summer break, you have to have all sorts of secret codes, and police let you in. You begin to think that the NSA has organized the evening's activities. But we are joined this evening for a political discussion. We're going to dissect a bit about what happened in the most recent primary, and take a bit of a look ahead at what's going to come up this fall. And boy, it is just, I don't know if an hour is going to be enough time. Seriously, we are talking with Susan Demas, and she is inside Michigan politics these days, and Todd Heywood, who contributes for not only City Post, but also for Between the Lines, so he has some unique perspectives on things. I really don't know where to get started, but I did want to say at first that I was interested to see that the money behind Proposal 8 was $8 million. Because I received Proposal 1.
Okay, I was going to say Proposal 8. What are you talking
Wow, I
about?
really
Proposal
missed out on a
1.
lot of stuff.
We only had one. We never got down to any
They just
further
spent
than that.
$8 million.
They spent $8 million. And I was very interested that there seemed to be no organized opposition to that. There was no real discussion about any drawbacks to that. I received 3 robocalls from people on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, talking about how you should vote yes on Proposal 1. I was one of the sort of irritated people who kept insisting that, I guess a lot of the argument was that, do you slit your own throat now by voting yes, or do you wait for the GOP to slit your throat later, and maybe without the guarantee that they would add some local funding? First, I wasn't all that sure that Proposal 1 was going to restore all the funding that we would lose from the
I'm still not sure that's all
property
clear.
tax. I don't think so either. Todd, what do you think?
Well, I read the House Fiscal Agency report on it, and it was as clear as a mud puddle.
Right.
And I think the proposal
On a rainy
was the same
day.
way. Yeah. When you have House Fiscal Agency reports that are saying it's intended to do, it's expected to do,
Right.
that's usually saying we're not really sure if the language is actually going to pull this off. And Susan, you sort of took a deep breath, so go ahead, jump
Well,
on me if I'm wrong on my reading.
I have a lot of experience reading these nonpartisan fiscal agency reports. And whenever you're talking about tax shifts and repealing taxes, they're never going to say, you're guaranteed to make $500 million more with this or lose it, because tax collections are funny things and you can only estimate. And so they do leave the language very open. So I think that in and of itself is not unusual. But I think what made this unusual was the complex system for replacement, because it's,
Right.
okay, so we're using tax credits, but these tax credits are already set to expire anyway, so isn't it just general fund? And then there's this fund that some businesses will pour their money into that will go to other businesses, and nobody could really explain the full mechanism. And so you did have some leaders like Warren Mayor Jim Fouts out there saying, this doesn't smell right, I don't think we're going to get all our money, let's not do it. But you didn't have a formal group out there for a no
Right.
campaign.
Right.
And certainly no one was spending money against it.
And despite the fact that a lot of things go down just simply because people are more likely to vote no than yes if they don't know for sure, in this case it seemed to me that there was enough propaganda out in favor of the proposal that it was likely to pass.
But on Facebook, it was very unpopular.
It was.
Just my observation.
At least among the people.
That could be your friends,
It could be
right?
the people that-
My friends.
I do have very weird friends.
Oh, I don't think that was so weird. Bonnie and I talked about this. I voted no because I don't trust what it said. I just really don't anymore. I'm becoming a cynic about what government wants to do with my money and other people's money.
Anytime I see that it is the major corporations that are in favor of this, obviously, because they're the ones that are already taking the hit, you can understand why they would want to see it go away. But I'm just less clear on how it is that all gets replaced. This is going to be interesting to watch.
It's a dumb tax. I thought
sure.
this is a stupid tax. You pay for a computer in your home 3 times over
Right.
if you have a business in your home.
But boy, would I have dashed to the polls with my rocket roller skates on if they had said that we're going to substitute a tax on millionaires for this tax, and we're going to, take everybody. Those are the kinds of things that would have excited me. There are ways we could have put this proposal together that would have guaranteed that money that I think would have been a way to make this a fairer system, and I'm not sure the ways in which it's going to change are going to be that much fairer.
Well, the clear winner in it was Rossman Truscott.
Yes.
They
Yes,
did.
They were the PR firm behind the Yes effort, and boy, were they taking a victory lap the next day. They were calling out the pollsters who had said this thing was going down. It was. It wasn't quite just an Amash like with him
I can't wait to
slitting
talk
the
about
throat of his enemy in public. But it
Biblical in a sense.
they were
But it was
still very
close.
pleased.
I think of Justin Amash as sort of the ISIS of Michigan.
It's pretty amazing.
He will take no prisoners if he gets his way. Although I was surprised to see him make the Washington Post as a result. I mean, if your audience thrives on bile, that's what they want, then the kind of speech, what we're talking about is Justin Amash's supposed concession speech, which wasn't really much of a concession speech.
Well,
not
victory
speech.
Victory speech, and it refused to accept the concession of his opponent. It was because it was so really kind of ugly. I mean, I gather the race itself had been ugly,
Yes.
but usually what the challenge is to be the gracious loser. It's why the basketball and baseball teams, as kids, you're all in the Little League supposed to go and shake the hands of the opponents when you lose. Not in this case. He was ready to bite the hand of anybody that tried to say anything. How is that going to play long term here?
Consequences for him long term. I mean, he doesn't have much of a Democratic opponent in the general, so
True.
he's pretty well home free, as are most of the winners of the August primary, because our districts are so lopsided one way or another that winners of the primary, 90% of them will probably be elected in the general in their favorite party. But, his stock and trade is being the anti-establishment candidate. He
Yeah.
is the heir to the Ron Paul name and that whole movement. And, his idea, is I'm not going to sit down and shut up, and I wasn't going to wait for Vern Ehlers, a very nice old man, to retire. I wanted the seat. I was running. I didn't care he was there,
Yeah.
and I pushed him out. Because I think my ideas are better than his. I think that my philosophy really resonates with people. And why should I be nice to people who I feel have insulted me and my family? You're part of the problem. You're part of old Washington. I'm here to change it. So I'm going to take my victory lap and pretty much tell you to...
Lump it.
That would be an appropriate term for the radio.
Yes.
Which he told Hoekstra.
Yes. Called him out as a lobbyist. And, he had some very unpleasant things to say. In some ways, though, it was somewhat refreshing because a lot of the sort of civility that we see, or what passes for civility, seems so achingly phony that, it's
Yes.
just really hard to take.
Right.
So it is refreshing to have that happen. It's just that in this era, it does seem that it was a bit extreme for the situation. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Well, I'm not sure if it's extreme. If you look at sort of the establishment versus the Tea Party split and civil war that's happening within the
True.
Republican Party.
Yeah, they've been lobbing
it's-
some bombs.
Lobbing bombs, they've been throwing nuclear weapons back and forth at each other. I
Well,
mean, if you
maybe.
watch nationally, they've been really
Nationally,
vicious.
yeah. I'm not sure I saw that
And
much here.
I think that we saw that underground in the Amash races.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So-
Well, you did have that ad with the soldier who said that, Justin Amash is Al Qaeda's best friend,
Yeah.
and he's, an Arab American. He took great personal offense at that.
Yeah.
Now, certainly you can argue that not debating your opponent and saying he's not a serious candidate and, still winning the endorsement of the major paper out there, the Grand Rapids Press anyway, he wasn't exactly magnanimous, but he certainly didn't run ads that you would call personal attack ads against Ellis. Maybe because he was so far ahead.
So
Well,
let's
you didn't have to.
Right.
Yeah, really.
let me say that this is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, LCC Radio, so that we can get into a sort of dissection about what really did happen to the Tea Party and with the Tea Party here in Michigan this time. I'm sure that Todd is delighted that his old friend Gary Glenn made it. Todd's been watching
Barely.
that race since the Barrett.
It's barely, but he still got it.
He
He
did.
did.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think Ken Braun said it best the next day when he
Who's a
said,
conservative columnist
Yeah.
at MLive.
Yeah.
who said, voters didn't really know what they were getting when they voted for Dave Agema originally for Greenville.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But they sure knew exactly what they were getting when they voted for Gary Glenn, and they voted for him anyway.
Anyway.
Well, but what do you make? I'm very curious. I mean, because he was kind of putting himself as the kinder, gentler Gary Glenn. I'm just interested in libertarian economic issues. I don't know what you're talking about being this bomb thrower on gay issues.
Yeah.
I just want to, I'm Tea Party all the way. Do you think that he was able to convince people, or do you think that people voted for him for those social issues?
I think it was both, frankly. And the reality is, you know, Gary Glenn tried to run away from his history. I mean, you saw his, when the GLEAP thing came out, Great Lakes Education Project thing came out, said, look, he's, you know, wants to criminalize homosexuality. He wants to, he cites and supports writings of neo-Nazis. Gary Glenn took great offense and denied he'd ever said that he wanted to recriminalize homosexuality.
Really?
And yet he had emailed that statement to me during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, so I was able to pull that back up out of the archives and go, no, Gary, don't lie.
Right.
I think he did in many instances sort of pull some wool over people's eyes.
But yet there's probably still a hardcore group that would have voted for him because of his past
Yep.
statements. So
Yep.
he still got them, I suspect.
Yep.
They didn't feel that he had abandoned them completely, I suggest.
And I think this is actually part of an ongoing transformation that we've seen from Gary since the Senate race. You know, Gary is very personable in person.
Oh.
And he's very good in front of a crowd. I saw him debate the crowd for the Senate race a couple of years ago, and he was amazing. I mean, I'll be honest with you,
Really?
he was very, very good.
I was hoping he wouldn't be.
No, he's very, very good. He's a very smart man, which I think makes it all the more
Dangerous.
weird to watch him take the positions that he takes.
So he is willing to be a politician. He is willing to change his and conform his views to whatever happens to be the prevailing mode to get in now if the
He
Tea Party
does.
is in.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
I remember being on Off the Record with him a couple years ago, and him saying with a straight face, well, you know, gay men are, you know, have a much shorter life expectancy because of AIDS, and this is a health risk. I don't
Yeah.
think that Gary Glenn would make such a statement today, because I
No.
think he understands that the political winds have shifted.
Now, immigration is not the issue here that it is in other states. Is that still an undercurrent and part of this debate, or did this just simply never come up in these primaries?
You know, I'm not aware of it other than in the national race. I mean, it's certainly becoming part of the
Certainly.
Senate race. Terry Lynn Land has
Yeah.
put out an ad blasting Gary Peters.
That's what I wondered about.
Let's talk about Terry Lynn a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is she destroying herself?
I wouldn't go that far.
Not that far, okay.
No, I mean, she's not down in the polls to the point where it's down for the count, and there's no way this can ever happen. But it's certainly not a top-tier race for the Republicans. I mean, there was a National Journal article that, you know, was very unflattering to her, and that's not a liberal publication. So I think that if this year shapes up to be the good Republican year that it looks to be, this can still be a very competitive race, but it's not due to the quality of the candidate, it's due to her party and being lifted up. On the immigration issue, it was an issue like with the Vassar situation up in mid-Michigan, somewhere vaguely around Saginaw, where, you know, the Wolverine Center is set to take in, you know, child
Oh,
migrants.
yes. Yeah.
And so it actually did become an issue in a state Senate race up there, a Republican primary where incumbent Mike Green was fighting off a challenge from Representative Kevin Daly, and they were trying to deport the children faster.
I see.
Even though neither of them have that power, obviously.
Right.
So it did play out, you know, I'd say in a very localized way, but there's a lot of anger, I think, and, you know, there's talk of children coming to centers in other areas of Michigan.
Kalamazoo is one. I think
Right.
Kalamazoo's got some.
There's
And-
discussion
and they have-
about them coming here in Lansing, too.
They
Yes.
have a
Yeah.
huge state Senate primary in Kalamazoo, so that could be fascinating how that plays out. But I think in November it could be an issue because, you know, I wrote about this issue for a column a couple weeks ago, and let me tell you, there are some very impassioned people out there. So I think that this does strike a chord with a certain set.
One of the things that has changed, and that may change the dynamics for the fall race nationally, is that I gather the number of children hitting the border has dropped dramatically in the last week or so, or 10 days. So that could mean that that becomes another one of those non-issues. We're also seeing the kind of thing happening where all of a sudden foreign affairs takes dominance in a lot of the national discourse. Of course, that really doesn't matter if you're running for local races here, but it does have implications for the 8th District and other places where we are electing people to Congress. That is one of the more interesting ones.
One of the things you pointed out is the 8th District, Republicans voted 2-1 against Democratic votes.
Right, and then if you look at the winners, it was 3-1.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really stark, so that's worrisome for the Dems.
Big gap.
If there's no energy on the part of the Dems to go out, and it would seem they would have cared, obviously they cared enough that the race was much tighter, I think, than people had believed between Eric Schertzing and Susan Grettenberger.
I think it was very surprising to see Susan poll as well as she did. I certainly didn't expect it. I
was surprised.
Yeah.
But I did see huge, and you know, my old friend Vivian used to say to me, he who has the most or largest yard signs will lose. Because she always saw it as a move of desperation.
Don't spend your money on yard signs.
No, but Grettenberger had huge signs up in some people's front lawns. I saw them in my neighborhood, and I thought, wow, putting more resources in than I might have imagined. But does that mean that there's a new star born? Does that give her some opportunity to go for other offices that we think she may be?
It could. I mean, she raised enough money for some things. I mean, my household got robo-polled clearly by her campaign based on the questions.
Oh, did they? Yeah.
You know, she had enough money to invest in some things, and I think she had a better ground game than people thought, because it came down to Ingham County to save Schertzing's bacon. It was it was really looking up until the end that she might pull this out.
Yeah, we were Facebooking back and forth, Tom and I, and it was like, he would say, and I'd say, oops, that was 2 minutes ago, go look again, you know, and it was really tight.
What's to say about Eric as a candidate in the fall?
I think that Eric had a tough race to begin with, and this is not helpful.
Yeah. Does that mean that it's less likely that the National will put resources in?
I would think so, yes. I think that the one saving grace for some Democratic congressional candidates in Michigan is, frankly, the Democrats just don't have very good prospects around the country.
True.
There are only so many seats that they can play in.
Even conceivably getting
right,
there.
and so, you know, perhaps they will put resources up in the UP seat in the 1st District, just because on paper it looks like it's winnable. And Dan Banashek isn't exactly a lovable guy. So, you know, Jerry Cannon's a great candidate on paper. You know, he's a retired general. Let's go for it. Maybe let's give some money, you know, to Pam Burns, because everybody knows that Tim Walberg can put his foot in his mouth. So, you know.
regularly.
Yeah. So, you know, perhaps that will happen. But in a year like this, you really are hoping for some national headwinds for those Democrats. And more, it's looking unlikely for that.
It's hard to tell. I mean, it's still a while out, and there could be some big news in the fall that will totally change what everybody's concerned about. But I was also looking on the other side. The Tom McMillan challenge to Mike Bishop didn't go very far, but he did potentially raise some questions about Bishop as a candidate. Is he a hands-down favorite in the district? Is he popular? Do we know how he's been polling?
I'm not aware of any polling comparing to Schertzing. Are you aware of anything? Or?
I have not seen anything.
So, I mean, I would assume the Bishop won't play well in Ingham County.
Schertzing will probably do quite well,
whereas he's obviously going to play very well in Livingston. The fight's really going to be in northern Oakland County, which is frankly where it always is. And this is a tough district.
Those boundaries have changed over the years, but I still think of it as the old Bob Carr district. You know, and I'm not sure how old I am. And
well, Schertzing worked for Bob Carr.
Yeah, and he had a hard time holding on to it. I mean, it was not easy, and yet, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that one. Returning to the Terry Lynn Land situation, I was surprised at the family wealth. What is all this thing about her self-funding her campaign? Gee, gosh, I didn't realize that going into public office, you did that well. So you can start throwing millions of dollars into your own campaign. I'm always surprised at that. What is the foufra about that? What are we learning about Terry Lynn Land's finances, and she didn't originally disclose the source or some details about self-funding. Now she's disclosed some details, but not all of the details. Is this thing going to have legs, or is this just insider baseball?
I think it could be used as a tool in the race, because how many of us forget a $3 million bank account?
I would be hard pressed.
I mean that's
$3 maybe. In my
$3
case.
maybe, possibly. I might forget.
But
I
you
doubt
and I
it.
would still
Not
be
at this
looking.
point. I'd be looking. But $3 million. Sorry, I just don't buy it. And that was the original excuse that we got from the Land campaign. Oh, I just overlooked that, so I didn't disclose it. I'm sorry. But ultimately, it depends on how they exploit it.
I think it adds to the narrative, and I think that's the problem for her, the narrative. And, part of it always worries me when it's a female candidate, because I want to make sure that some of it isn't just underlying resentment towards women candidates. Because we saw a lot of that in the Hillary campaign at the same time.
Yes.
I find, excuse me, Hillary Clinton makes my teeth itch. If she's our first female president, it's going to drive me nuts, because I'm going to want to have the first female president. The fact that we have this, corporate war hawk in there as our first female president just makes me cringe, but that's the way it is. So I saw Terry Lynn Land give a speech at the League of Women Voters a few years ago, and she was quite good. And she was talking quite progressively about expanding voting opportunities in the state, and she seemed to be one of those old-fashioned Republicans that we saw, Milligan Republicans from the state. Now, because of the era, she has to cast herself in some ways as the Tea Party candidate. It seems it's such a bad fit that that's part of the problem. But I'm also surprised that she does not seem to be doing well. I mean, she does not seem to be captivating people. She doesn't seem to be good at retail politics either, from what I gather.
Well, the job of being a state secretary of state is quite different from, looking to be a U.S. Senate candidate. And, there's not a lot of overlap in the job description. And I think that, she was the top vote getter as Secretary of State, and very well liked by a lot of Democrats and independents, and much more progressive than her successor in terms of things like no reason to absentee voting.
Yes.
But, those are not issues when you're running for U.S. Senate. All of a sudden, Benghazi and immigration and the IRS scandal and all of those things that fire up the conservative base, those are issues that, drive a U.S. Senate race. And, she had to fight to try and keep any kind of challengers out, because that would be a distraction, and she doesn't know how she'll come out of the primary. So you have to place yourself firmly to the right. And, clearly when you've seen her in the rare instances where she's interacted with the media, her knowledge of, the vast issues that you have to tackle as a U.S. Senator was somewhat lacking. And so her handlers have decided to keep her, kind of sheltered and closed off. And, who knows if any debates are going to be happening for any major office in this state. And so, she, I think, did a great job by a lot of standards in her previous work. But I think, you can make the case that she wasn't ready for prime time, and she's not willing to go for a strategy to put herself out there so we can really see if that's off base or if we all rush to judgment.
I myself noted over the weekend when I first heard about the Yazidi, for some reason I thought they were talking about tzatziki, which is a dish I'm very fond of. So I looked up no, that's not what they're talking about. I mean, you have to be so knowledgeable about even an obscure religious sect in the Middle East that all of a sudden lands on your plate. And there is this sort of Tea Party agenda that you have to really know how to hit those hot buttons. And she does not appear to be very good at that.
In watching her staff,
that's
I think she's being
be.
really poorly served by her campaign team. I mean,
they should know.
When you're putting a candidate in front of a press gaggle on Mackinac Island during the policy meeting, and she's not been prepped,
that's not good.
That's bad staff work. That's not just on the candidate.
Although
that's
the candidate should be sure that the staff is on their toes.
Well, and
ultimately it's her responsibility.
Sure.
So and yet we didn't see, at least that I'm aware of, any campaign heads roll as a result of that.
No.
Well,
and a good candidate would have gone, you know what? Yeah, I had some failings here, but where was my staff work? Where was my prep? And would have started cutting heads off, because that's the time to do it. now we're running
We're
in
in it,
general.
yeah.
You start cutting your campaign staff now, and headlines are campaign in disarray, campaign falling
Right.
apart, land can't hold it together. I mean, it's bad policy or bad PR if you do it now
Yeah.
than if you'd have done it back during the Mackinac policy conference. So I think she's really locked herself into a really poor strategy with a team that is not serving her well.
Now, she started running ads. I haven't seen any yet from the Peters campaign about her or about him either. They haven't run bio ads on Gary Peters yet that I've seen.
There is a bio ad on
Is there?
Gary that was run. It's very, I think it's his wife talking, if I remember correctly, about how he serves the military and he it's one of those.
What's gonna motivate that race in the fall?
I really think that national politics or the national mood is going to dominate that race. And frankly, that's Terry Lynn Land's opening. She has been hiding out, so she's not making mistakes that can be exploited by
True.
the Peters campaign. And so the idea is hopefully the rising red tide will carry her, and you hit voters with just a barrage of ads at the end, and that's enough to carry her through.
I think Common Core is an issue, but it seems as though that's become sort of a bipartisan issue in a way, because there are a lot of progressive Democrats that are as opposed to Common Core as Tea Party people. That schools agitate and irritate a lot of people. There are always those concerns. But I'm really not sure yet what the galvanizing issue is going to be, the one that really drives
Yeah.
people
I
out
think
to
we
the
know
polls.
yet.
I don't think so.
Well, and I think it's going to be very different in different parts of the state. I mean, I think geography is going to play a role in this, and I think how the economy is playing in certain parts of the state. There's definitely been some recovery in some parts of the state, whereas other parts of the state remain economically depressed.
What parts of the state are doing well?
I wouldn't say anybody's doing well. I want to be very clear about
Grand
that.
Rapids.
But
Grand
there-
Rapids is doing as well as anybody is in the
Yes,
state.
but
is
Grand
that-
Rapids is definitely
Yeah.
doing okay.
Well, there's been a huge difference in how certain classes have done
Yes.
in this recovery. I mean, if you're a college graduate, even when unemployment here was 14%, your unemployment rate was still about 5%.
Yeah.
And so, parts like Okemos, where I live, Bloomfield Hills, those
Right.
parts never did poorly. And so, to some degree, we're pretty stratified here. And so it's not just necessarily a matter of, well, the UP is doing bad, but, northern lower Michigan is okay. It's kind of playing out in neighborhoods,
Yeah.
in cities.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, that's not real good for state cohesiveness, but that's the unfortunate reality that we're facing.
The statistic that really bothered me was the one I'm trying to remember who did the research. I thought it was Pew, but it may not have been. That came out just in the last week or so about the fact that people have lost more than 30% of their wealth over the last decade. The median wealth in this country has dropped precipitously, and I think that is something that still impacts the people. Yes, you may have a job, but here's what's happened. You haven't had very many raises. You may have even been told that you're going to get fewer perks. We may even cut your pay. And because if you don't like it, we have 15 other people eager and willing to come in and do that. Your young son or daughter who just graduated from college may still be in the basement. They haven't found their niche yet. If you're an established person in a job, you may be doing okay, but you're nervous and you've got kids with debt. And
Right.
all of these issues it's a kaleidoscope of issues that make people, I think there's a tremendous sense of uneasiness out there now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But have any of the nationally, running for national office in Michigan brought that up, this whole class differential?
Well, I mean, we have had a debate about income inequality more than we have for years. I mean, the president has talked about it, but we're debating whether inequality exists or whether it's good or bad.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of a shocking debate because
That
this
doesn't
really,
get you to the ramparts.
Well, it shouldn't be an ideological issue. Yes, there's definable data out there that inequality exists and it's gotten worse. And I think that whether you're conservative or liberal, you can acknowledge that that's not a good thing. How you deal with it will be radically different based on your perspective. But the fact that we're debating basic facts, it doesn't really bode well for us moving forward to fix anything.
And this is an observation that I've had politically is as the Tea Party has gained more power, we end up arguing about basic facts where the data is irrefutable
Yeah.
instead of debating the policy solutions.
Yes.
Is that a fair observation?
Well,
I mean, have you seen similar?
I completely agree. I mean, the fact is that, there is we have two very controversial issues with healthcare reform and with climate change. And we seem to disagree on basic facts about both of them that should be irrefutable. And yet the principle of stating that, no, there can't be any man-made global warming supersedes any data that might be out there by those eggheads who have their own radical agenda.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a bad thing that we have 50 million uninsured people in this country and we should do something about it. No, just talking about it is socialism.
Right.
And so it's very hard to tackle problems in a constructive way, which is what Republicans and Democrats used to be able to do, both parties.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Susan Demas of Inside Michigan Politics and Todd Heywood of many places, including City Pulse and Between the Lines and all sorts of exciting places that he writes for. And I think what we really need to remember is that I believe that what happened along the way is that the GOP got very smart in figuring out how to manipulate the media. One of the challenges when media used to be partisan, I mean, a town had the Independent, and they had the Democrat, and they had the Republican newspaper, and they were all clearly defined. When they all collapsed into one, they embraced a commercial model that said, we have to serve all of these constituencies. We can't advocate for any one above the other in anything except our editorial pages. And so what we need to do is embrace this standard of objectivity, which unfortunately too many journalists viewed as we simply give equal weight to any position that's out there.
Yeah.
If I say, the sun rises in the east, if somebody wants to say the sun rises in the west and they can get two people together to call our newspaper, we'll say it, except for this group that suggests that it rises in the west. And part of the challenge on the online group now is that, yes, we have these separate PolitiFact sites that do fact-checking, and they have some power, but now we're starting to see partisan groups that have their own point of view establish their fact-checking, so that muddies the waters a bit. It's a separate debate, and if you can just keep debating the facts and never get around to the policy issues as you're talking about, it's this huge distraction where you never talk about solutions. It seems to me that it's been a fairly crass effort to really make it difficult to just say, that's wrong. I mean, we should be debating what to do about man-made climate change, not whether there is any. And that's the big issue. Can the press find the courage?
Unfortunately, in some newsrooms, we seem to be having some sort of esoteric philosophical debate now. What is truth, really?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
Ayn Rand.
Because there are facts and there are studies, and I think there is some counterweight to that because you have seen this rise of data-driven journalism.
Right.
Because there is a hunger amongst at least some readers for facts, but in politics, let's not forget, oftentimes it's not a debate of facts, it's a debate of emotion.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you have, very counterintuitive ideas running up against each other, and I think a lot of media outlets don't really know what to do about it.
And that was supposed to be their role. That's the reason that they were the gatekeepers. They were the ones who said, we're not going to put in the Flat Earth Society people. If we were in Nazi Germany, we're not going to, we would be the ones to stand up and say what's happening is wrong. And we would not be quick to collude. But I don't see that kind of courage in the press here. And I think we've seen, one of the things I was surprised by years ago when NBC was purchased by GE, naive Bonnie thought, the wall between press and corporation is strong enough. It's so much a part of our culture. CBS is the Tiffany network. Dan Rather will never have a hard
Spike
time.
the story.
Dan Rather got spiked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a totally different ballgame, and it is a very corporate world. And it's hard because I think the problems that we're facing are so extraordinary in this era. I mean, literally, the gentleman from NASA the other day who went up and checked some of what's going on in the Arctic found out that the methane bubbling up from the ocean floor is far more dramatic than he had ever suspected. And he dropped the F-bomb and said, we are now in big trouble, and used a word and tweeted that out. Yet that I have not seen that make the national news. I haven't seen anybody follow up. I suspect
That's
he's
because that's
being
not a
muzzled in the
fact.
basement somewhere.
It's not a fact.
Not a fact.
It's a legend.
It's something we should be debating maybe next year. Maybe next year when the polar bears have no place to go. I mean, it's getting down to the short strokes for some of these decisions, and we seem to be literally doing nothing.
It's easier to get people to buy in to legends like you're using your bridge card to buy caviar.
Ah,
It's-
yeah.
Rather than facts.
It's because I think it goes to the whole thing why negative political attacks work, and it's because we want to believe the worst in other people. I think a sad statement about where we have gotten to.
Well, and when your staff has been cut, you know, if you're a newspaper, and I mean, back when I first came here, there were 35 to 40 people in the newsroom.
Right.
Now there's 6 in the same newsroom.
Yeah, there was that many Capitol correspondents.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
You know what you're doing?
unbelievable.
If somebody feeds you, if you've got a column to write 3 times a week and somebody feeds you a little tidbit about some guy who was standing in line and saw somebody ahead of him buy steak with his bridge card, then that's going to be a much easier column to write than having to go out and dig out something yourself when you're being asked to produce so much so often. I think that's part of the challenge. We're seeing the rise of this sort of industrial media complex too, of now people that are feeding this and throwing it out into the social media, and so it's distorting the debate to a degree.
Well, I think too we're also seeing reprocessing of press releases. And I think that's
Absolutely.
really important. It used
Yeah.
to be reporters would discern what was functional about a press release and evaluate what was worth talking about in that information.
And re-report it.
Right.
and then
re-interview.
go and do their own
Yeah.
reporting. That is not happening anymore.
No.
And I know, we had a little scandal when I was at American Independent News Network at the Colorado Independent, where we had somebody who was taking things out of people's press releases and using it in the story. That is now the standard in journalism.
Right.
And we actually
We're having
ended up-
debates at the J School about how that should be attributed and when can you take it and how far do you have to check, and it's
We
not
have
a
major news outlets that cover the Capitol that will literally just print your press release because
Yep.
they
Right.
need one more headline.
right.
It's a sad state, and I think that this dwindling press corps. Not only do we have fewer bodies, but we have the years of experience have just
Yeah.
disappeared.
Dropped dramatically.
So many people who have retired,
Yeah.
or they've gone on to find jobs in PR because there are no more jobs,
Right.
and you have so many media outlets that take a look and they say, well, I have a middle-aged person with a lot of experience, but they really stand out on, my salary list here.
Yep.
I can hire a college graduate at a quarter of what I pay them, and will there be a drop in quality? Sure. Do they know the difference between there or there? Probably not. But I don't care about any of that because I can go buy a boat.
Indeed. And not only that, that older person tends to challenge me and say, no,
Right.
we really should reveal
And maybe
this.
points out the lack of journalistic standards or
Yes.
the biases, and
Yes.
you wouldn't want that.
Yes.
There is, I think there is a battle for the soul of journalism, and unfortunately I think journalism is losing.
You know what always bothered me is I felt that they were fighting some of the wrong battles. I mean, they said, for example, Washington Post reporters didn't vote, because you didn't want to be seen as being too partisan. Well, that's a little naive. I mean,
Right.
just be transparent. Tell me where you're coming from, and then I'll evaluate your coverage, figuring that you may have a perspective that I need to factor in. They wouldn't join an organization for fear it would be. I mean, I sign up and like everything on Facebook just because I want to hear what they're saying, not because I
Right.
necessarily agree. And I think those are the kinds of standards that were somewhat dubious. But at the same time, I mean, they really have gone too far now, and they are really using, I mean, they're now calling it, there's various terms we're inventing. One is branded journalism, and another one is, I have 15 different names now about, which really means just taking other people's work and throwing it in because you need something to fill in the mix.
Whereas those of us who do the digging around, we're advocacy journalists now.
That's
We're
right.
not journalists, we're advocates.
Well,
Because you ask
you're-
questions.
You're concerned and advocate by the particular side that you are, criticizing, and then the next day when you go after somebody else, then you have a totally new agenda.
Then you're an okay reporter.
Right.
I mean, depending on who's reading it. But it is particularly frustrating to me because I hold everybody accountable. I don't care who you are. If there's something stinking on your side, I'm going to go after it. I don't care.
Equal opportunity digger.
Yes. And I think we've lost that. And I certainly don't think we're teaching young journalists today how
We're
to do
trying. We're trying, but they all think that I mean, one of the things that's shocking is that the rhetoric about how the press is biased has worked.
Yeah.
This was a concerted effort to demonize the press, just as unions have been demonized and school teachers have been demonized. That's a group I was always amazed. I figured the press was fairly easy to get people to hate. I mean, we're kind of a scruffy, nasty bunch.
We're jerks.
We are.
Yeah. We ask these annoying questions.
Yeah.
all the time we're asking questions.
But if they've succeeded in demonizing school teachers
Yeah.
that were just at the right hand of God for all these years,
Right.
imagine what they think of us. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think
well, I
that's
think
So
we know
how
what
does
they
that play
think of us.
out to your students then? Because
they don't think of the job as being all that good a thing to be doing. I mean, when they say to around the Thanksgiving table, you know, I'm going to be a reporter, everybody considers them either a vulture that's chasing ambulances to show us the latest grisly severed head out of Iraq, or somebody who is going to be biased one way or the other in what they're covering.
or just a fool because you're not going to make any money.
Right, I mean,
Well, that one might be true.
that is true.
Okay.
That's if they can even find a job.
well, there's that too. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Todd Heywood and Susan Demas. I guess we should shift gears in this last quarter of the show and look forward to the fall. Oh boy, I don't know that I'm looking forward to the fall. I'm having a hard enough time getting through the Gaza summer and getting through the ISIS summer and getting through, I mean, there are things now that are really ugly happening out there that don't even register on my radar because the truly gruesome things and frightening things. I mean, the thought that the problems with Putin and Ukraine have now
Right.
shifted to third place?
Yeah.
That's on a good day, third place.
It's horrifying.
It's astounding.
Yeah.
We're in it. I mean, we are in it. This is a really tough era. There are plenty of things that could go blindingly wrong for all of us in a gnat's eye here. And meanwhile, we're seeing the European economy soften dramatically. That could be
And that could be a trigger.
That
Yeah.
could be.
Money
Our
enough.
stock market seems overvalued to many people.
Right.
That could be a trigger. I mean, I think that we are, you know, in some ways prognosticating without enough information yet, because really the campaign won't kick off till after Labor Day. But even then, I think events could dictate what swings this election.
Oh, I absolutely think that what happens in the next 2 months, 3 months, really is going to dictate what the outcome in this election is. Particularly when you start talking about national elections.
Right.
You know, I mean, in fairness.
At the state level, what do you think will happen? I mean, the big race here is the governor's race.
Actually, I think the AG's race is going to be the interesting one to watch.
Maybe interesting, but I don't know it'll have as much consequence at the end of the day. Could be because of the court rulings that our current AG has been getting involved in Bill Schuette.
Well, and his enforcement of the Medical Marijuana Act
Right.
and the laws that he's going after. I mean,
Those groups seem to be so disparate, they've never come together. If somebody could organize those.
the medical marijuana folks.
And
with some
yeah,
political.
all of these groups
all
together
these
that
groups.
have
Why don't they just,
Yeah.
we need to get rid of that person.
focus on that one person. Yes.
That would be interesting. Although there was a Epic MRA, was it Epic MRA's poll that came out that showed Schuette's favorability was like 39% right now. I mean,
But does anybody even know his opponent? That's
And
it.
that's the question: is will the Democrats sink the money into the AG's race that they need to sink into it to get the word out? And what we're seeing is Mark Schauer's PR move right now. I mean, at least sort of the public stuff, it's really being driven by the Democratic Governors Association. You know, the ads that have been put up for Schauer have been paid for by them. So the question is are we're going to see more outside organizations sort of driving the messaging, but who is it going to be?
Well, this is a big dark money election
Yes.
as well. So we don't even know who's going to be funding what at a certain
Right.
point here, and we don't know, you know, the issues haven't been framed, but somebody's out there making ads now. Yes, they have quick response and they can wait for a while, but they've certainly got some plans in the hopper. What are they going to go after Schauer for?
Well, they've been, casting him off as a typical liberal, a tax hiker, which is a kind of a risky move because certainly Governor Snyder has raised taxes on most individuals.
The
But
retirees who vote would have a real reason
that's
to be
true,
worried.
and he does have a gap with seniors. But casting a Democrat as a tax hiker is usually a fairly easy sell, regardless of what the record is.
Right.
And that seems to be pretty typical and also propping up any good news out of the economy. For years, we heard this mantra out of the Snyder administration, no credit, no blame. Now it's all credit. and it's all because of him. His campaign press secretary, is tweeting, anything. We have 2 more people staying in the state. That's all Rick Snyder. Any good news.
It really is getting that bad.
It is down to
But, at the same time, you can't deny that most people, however unsure they feel about the economy, they do not feel as bad about things as they did in 2009 and 2010. So
Hope is on the horizon.
right,
Always.
and that's very helpful to the governor.
What would a stock market plunge along about October do?
Wow.
I'm serious. I'm not even sure who it would play for.
I'm not sure who it would play for either. I really don't have an answer on that.
They're talking about it, both sides. Because it's a likelihood.
I would assume that the current presidential administration gets the blame. It's 6 years anyway,
Right.
And he's the buck stops with him, and so that could really help the Republicans.
Yeah. I think this is such a volatile year that it would not surprise me to have some sort of dramatic event take place between here and now. If those ISIS people can get their hands on any kind of dirty bomb and head to D.C., they're going to be there tomorrow.
I don't even think they need to go to D.C. for it. I honestly think that the ISIS situation, the situation in Ukraine, I think we really are in a situation where it's really just going to take one flare-up of a situation and it's going to explode into an international set of incidences. I think even the Israeli-Palestinian situation, it could flare up again at any given time, and that's going to impact our national election as well.
And I have
that's really
seen
important.
that discussion change.
Yes.
Many, many years I've always wondered what will it take to have people feel some sort of awareness. And this is ironic, I think. In an era when many people are still nervous about Arab Americans because of the issue of terrorism, and that's played well with the Tea Party in particular, we all of a sudden, seeing all those kids being pulled out of UN-supported schools in the Gaza Strip, all of a sudden people are saying, wow, that's going to breed terrorism. You can't continue to do this to people and not have blowback. And what we're seeing is this, Chalmers Johnson, in that trilogy of books that he wrote, the late Chalmers Johnson, one of which was called Blowback, talked about the fact that, we created Osama bin Laden as a result, because we don't have much of a debate. We have a fairly superficial debate about what tactical moves should we make today. We don't talk about what the longer term strategies are and some of the fundamental economics beneath them. The fact right now I think we're really in danger is with Putin's relationship with all of the people in Europe. I don't see them as being too quick to want to help us with anything or do anything about his situation in the Ukraine.
So I want to get a little program. Let me get you to guess. Let me get your guess on where we'll be the day after the election. Who's going to be the governor-elect?
Ooh.
And by what percentage?
If I had to bet, I would say Rick Snyder is reelected, and I would say he will win by 5 to 9 points.
Really, that much?
Yep.
I'd say that too.
Huh.
I don't think he's unleashed his power yet. I really don't.
No, and that that power is
I
all in his bank account and the bank account of the Republican Governors Association and the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
I think Schauer's gonna be like swatting a fly.
I'm going to actually go on a risk here, and I'm going to say that Schauer will come much closer, if not actually winning.
I was going to say.
I would actually put it within 2%. And I could be completely wrong, and again, everything could play out. But
because then it's up for grabs.
Well, and everything is up for grabs.
I know.
Anytime you're discussing an election in early August, there's so much that can happen, and so much that can make all of us look stupid here. So this is like the worst job of being a pundit is, 3 months out when I have none of the information I need, I'm just going to go with my gut.
it's a good thing I feel
you get a
good about
director
looking
buying
dumb.
caviar in New York. You never know.
Meanwhile, Ukraine has gone very close to being the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that throws.
There's
everything.
that feel.
Yeah, there is.
There really is that feel.
There were-
We're in
Well,
a
when it
Cuban
was on the top of the agenda in the news, yes, there was that feel. I don't get that feel anymore with the Ukraine crisis. Right.
I don't think that just because it's not at the top of the news agenda, it means that it's gone away. That's my
Oh no,
fear.
but it definitely hasn't gone away.
And that's why I think we're really into a dangerous area right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are so many dramatic things. I mean, what happens if there's some sort of crisis at the space station and the Ruskies say, we're not going to go get them, you know. We don't have to go get them anymore. Let us...
Well,
I mean, and that's what we're seeing, too, when you were talking about how we really don't take a long, deep look at things. We go on some of these surface issues. It really does make us vulnerable. I mean, we saw the outcry over the Boko Haram kidnapping the girls. And it was a heck of a tweet for a while, bring back the girls. But, you know, it went away and nothing happened, and those girls are still gone. But these are highly manipulative situations where we're seeing people buried alive in Iraq the other day. I mean, barbaric kinds of things that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Who had the franchise to build those wrought iron crucifixes? I mean, who was making those in the basement? Have you seen those? You may have been nicer than I was and didn't click on the things that say warning graphic image.
I can't do it.
Yeah, I avoid.
They're
those.
crucifying people.
Right.
I mean, and they built crucifixes. Somebody is out there building, cast iron crucifixes in order to torture people. I mean, there's something
Some
really
real sick
wrong
things
in a
going on in
world
the
going
world.
on now that I think just has everybody revulsed. And what happens, as somebody suggested, is it revulses people against all politics in general. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want any part of that.
Right.
And I think we may see a very low turnout election.
We're at a really disturbing point in geopolitics because I think there are an awful lot of people who feel non-interventionist after the disasters that Iraq and Afghanistan were. But we have people getting slaughtered in the streets in the most brutal way in Israel, in Gaza, in Iraq. And what do we do about that?
And I think that's a fundamental question that we have confronted a lot since the 20th century. I mean,
American
the Armenian
exceptionalism.
genocide, the Armenian genocide, the Jewish Holocaust, the Holocaust of the queers during the Holocaust, Rwanda. Our American exceptionalism really have not figured out the answer to how do we address genocide. I mean, even Sudan,
Right.
we said, this is genocide, and then didn't intervene,
Same with Rwanda.
even though we were required. We never called it genocide.
Well, we didn't
in
call it
Rwanda,
genocide, right.
But Sudan, we
Yes,
actually
we
called
actually
it genocide,
and still didn't.
which required us immediately under treaties to intervene.
Well, but
And
of
we
course,
didn't.
those same treaties said we didn't torture either.
Well, yes, although
we play fast and loose with a lot of these treaties.
In fairness, President Obama finally did say, yes, we did torture people.
Now, see, one of the things I think that has narrowed our debate is the
as if we
idea
didn't
that
know that.
non-interventionist is the kind word for isolationist, which is
Yeah.
what they really call it. I am an isolationist. Hey, you know what? We're spending way too much on the military. Let the Europeans figure it out, because really, I think when terrorism comes home from Iraq, it's going to go there first. It's probably not going to come here. They're much closer. They can get them. We're spending all of our resources on, protecting everybody else. I think that it is. I am an isolationist, an unabashed isolationist. I think mostly what we've done in the 20th and 21st century is make it worse. And I think you can arguably look backward at all the wars we've had, and we've left those countries in worse shape than they were, and we've made them breeding grounds for terrorism. Maybe if we meddled less and took care of our own people first, a lot of us would be better off. But then again, that's why I don't run for anything.
Anymore.
Anymore, yes. Well, as if that were what you would call I was in absolutely no danger of winning that election many years ago. For those of you who don't remember, I was the Green Party candidate for that infamous 8th district back in the year 2000, and some people will never let me live it down either. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ in Lansing, Michigan. We've been talking with Todd Heywood this evening and also with Susan Demas. And next week we're going to be talking about some of the things going on with the Lansing Neighborhood Councils and with the Time Bank, and looking into some of those issues and talking about what's happening with some of the parks issues here that are happening in Michigan. So we look forward to seeing you again next Monday night at 7 p.m. Look for our YouTube video as opposed to our live webcast these days. And we will see you next Monday night at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much.